go ahead and get started. Good morning, everybody. This is Doug, and you are listening to What's the Hazard? It is September 15th, Friday here in Omaha, Nebraska. Another beautiful morning. I really enjoy the fall. The fall is my favorite time of year.
Me too.
So we had a beautiful morning, got outside, get a lot of little sun in my retina, and drank some coffee and walked the dogs. So it's off to a good start.
What a great morning. And it's nice and cool and crisp.
Nice and cool. I love that. Well, my guest this morning is Erin Aliano. We just met recently through a mutual friend, family member, Abby. Everybody knows Abby that listens to the show.
Abby.
So she put us in contact with each other, which I really appreciate because you were going to talk about something that I don't have a lot of familiarity with, which is change management. You are a change management consultant now.
Right.
You've started your own business, which is very exciting.
It is. Thank you.
It is Four Leaf Solutions.
Four Leaf Solutions right here in Omaha, Nebraska.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
And so for those of the listeners that don't know really what change management is or how one becomes a change management specialist, did you grow up wanting to be a change management specialist?
You know, they never tell you what you want to be when you grow up.
So like doctor, lawyer, change management?
Or a change management practitioner.
Yeah.
What would you like to be?
How did you come to be in this profession?
It's amazing. I didn't know I wanted to be a change management practitioner.
I'm sure.
Until I actually took a leadership course through the University of Nebraska, Omaha. And they had one of the classes was about change management. And it talked about helping people to understand why we were making a change, preparing them to make the change, going to training to learn how to make the change, and then helping them to coach and sustain the change for the return on investment or to grow the business or whatever the why was, and to help measure the success of that. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've been doing this my entire career. I just called it training, or I called it coaching, consulting, any of those different. Being a leader.
Right.
And it just put a formal practice in place. So I explored more, and there's actually the Association of Change Management Professionals, which is an organization that helps to certify professionals. They can get a certification in change management. People go for organizational psychology at different universities. They're able to apply this work, and they're able to help leaders help their teams through any change throughout any industry. I got interested in safety because of Abby.
Really?
And understanding, the different regulations that you have through mandates from OSHA or any of the other regulatory agencies. But putting those into place on a regular basis, making those changes in process, I think is really important to work with the people that are impacted the most by it, and helping your leaders through that, because a lot of times they have to do it over and over, every year, every quarter.
And so much intentional change just results in abject failure that I've seen. Having spent 25 years with the government, the government would roll out changes to either to technologies or procedures, and they would always be met with just total resistance. And I want to talk about, why people fear change so much, or it appears that they do. They're just so resistant to change. Yeah. But how did you get started in this? What was your first change management gig?
Oh, well,
like officially?
Yeah, officially.
Because we're doing it all the time.
I think I can look back in my career. I mean, I can think back to being 19 years old, a receptionist in this neighborhood, by the way, and that we're recording in, and the building was switching from to a totally non-smoking building, right? We used to be able to smoke in offices. I don't know if you all remember that.
I remember, of course, yeah.
So it was a city ordinance, and it was going to non-smoking, and I'm a little sweet 19-year-old receptionist, and I had to apply my leadership skills and saying, hey, there's no more smoking. Putting up signs, making sure people are aware this ordinance is going to take place on this day. These are the things that we'll do to accommodate as the tenant, as a tenant, and make sure that the renewing of the lease was up to date, and they were explained that in that entire process. But also accommodating them with other, you can smoke 15 feet away from the building, those different types of things. Like that was literally my first go at it with change management.
That seems like a really challenging one, because I remember that meeting with significant resistance. Yes. That was not a popular change.
No, it was not at the time, especially. And even thinking back to the power dynamic. I mean, sweet little 19-year-old Erin, the receptionist, telling 45, 50-year-old
bad news.
Yes.
Oh, that was cowardly that they said, Erin, go do this.
Come on. Earn that $4.75 an hour.
Yeah.
But really going out and having conversations with those tenants. And it was a natural thing for me to do, to say, hey, Bob, you understand where we're at, empathizing with him, showing him the accommodation. You know, you can smoke over here. There's an ashtray. There's a bench. Like, we did accommodate, sadly, but that's what we did because we wanted to keep them as tenants, right? When you think about applying that to current state organizational change management, I want to work with the people, the employees that are impacted, the leaders that are putting forth the change, and helping them to make accommodations where we are able to, right? We talked before, if it's a safety, let's just say the safety vest, you know, are we going to do orange? Are we going to do green? Are we going to do yellow? Like, what can we do to accommodate and give choice in the matter and help that person come along? I love the fact that you brought up fear, because whenever there's fear, that's where you see that resistance. And all of us, when I'm working with clients, all of us have brains, which is really helpful for me because I know a lot about how brain psychology works. And if you do this with me, put your hand out this way and then fold your thumb underneath and then put your hand down. So this is my little model of the brain that I use.
Okay.
And this is the amygdala, right? Like, every one of our senses, hear, smell, taste, see, all has to come through the brainstem, and it has to go through the amygdala. And the amygdala is where our reptilian brain is, right? You know a lot about this.
Mine's overdeveloped up in the,
the reptilian brain. So that emotion is there. And usually I see it in fear or love, right? And so you have to get through that, and it processes up to that prefrontal cortex to say, hey, this is where I'm going to make all my smart decisions here. And I'm going to be a part of this. I'm going to help contribute to the change. I'm going to provide input. I want to be a part of the solution and not a part of the problem. What I encourage leaders to do is really to ease that fear by, let's talk about any of your concerns. Let's understand why this fear is happening. It could be pretty legitimate in some cases. Like, I'm scared if we do this, it's not going to keep us safe. It's going to be more dangerous. I'm the one out on the floor. I'm the one who's doing this repetitive motion every day. I'm afraid that this is what's going to happen. And then working with that leader to understand those fears, to help address them, answer any questions. If there's an accommodation in the process that we can make, let's do it, right? We want to keep our employees. We want to make sure that they are able to do their jobs well, that they're able to be safe, and then also go off into retirement and play golf or go on walks with their dog or do whatever it is that they want to do in their retirement.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And so, I'd not really considered that. I have seen numerous situations where changes have been implemented without a good strategy, and the transition is not smooth. Obviously, what we're hoping for is a smooth, adoption of the change and maybe some positive reinforcement of the change.
Right.
It seems like this fear of loss, I'm going to lose something in this change. I mean, uncertainty in general makes most people uncomfortable.
Yeah. And helping people to understand, if they are feeling that they're going to lose something in it, helping them to see maybe there's a gain, maybe there's more value. I can think of examples that they might lose, something that's really important to them. Like, I am the best machine operator in this area, and if you take this step away from me, I'm not going to be able to show my value in that way. Automated, maybe one of the steps, and to say, okay, we understand and we recognize that, Doug, you were the best at this step that we're not going to automate, and you may feel that's a loss, but let's also point out all these other steps that you rock at and you're doing great, and we want to make sure that you're able to do this faster. We're able to, as an organization, grow and do this for a longer period of time. So a lot of times when you're looking at the loss, it's the loss of that value, the loss of where they see themselves.
Identity, maybe.
Identity, and being able to shift or reframe that with them, looking at actual data to show where do they actually provide the best effort, or provide the best value in the organization. When I'm working with teams, a lot of times in helping to recognize that type of resistance from that individual, I talk about individual accountability, and how you show up as an individual impacts your team, impacts your leader, and impacts the organization. And if we're all in this together, then how you show up as an individual, holding yourself accountable, leaning in to understand why we're making the change, what's in it for us as a group, not only for me as an individual, but for us as a team, and saying, okay, I see this automation is really going to benefit our team, where we're going to be able to produce more, we're going to be safer, we're going to be able to show up for our customers better, whatever the goal of the change is. Because I guarantee the executives or the leaders are not up there thinking, how can I mess with Doug and his process today? Right. It's too expensive to do that. And it's too expensive to be wrong, which is another reason why when we're talking about whether or not you address the fear here up front and bring in your teams to ask them questions, really understand the process and how it's working, use the data that you have available to you, and then put in the new process to make the change that is needed. And then hopefully you'll have less resistance when it's in that adoption phase, when it's in the coaching phase and we're going to the new normal. You're either going to do that here or you're going to do that here. But at some point you're going to address the resistance.
Right.
I'd much rather address it up front.
Makes sense.
And then go forward with the process. It's going to save your company money. It's going to save you retention of your employees, relationship with your employees. I mean, your training is going to be more accurate. There's just so many benefits to utilizing change management. I'm not saying that just because I'm a change management practitioner.
I completely, it makes perfect sense to me.
And I love human beings. I mean, that's who we are.
Oh, that's where we differ, I think. No, I'm kind of kidding, somewhat. But so it seems like these are skills that every management group should have, whether they have an immediate need for it or not. So your consultation involves assisting with a change, right? If they're rolling out a new process or rolling out a new system or whatever they're doing. Yeah. In my world, in the safety world, we hear a lot of people saying, well, we want to change our culture. We want to drive this new culture. And that involves programs and even new vernacular oftentimes. And rarely is that done well, even though there is maybe a real desire to do so. But also, we make like smaller corrections all the time. I mean, even those little tweaks and corrections are changes. So the skill set that you bring is probably something that every management team should have. I
agree. And so I started off my career as an actual FTE, working for various organizations and saying, okay, I'm in here, I'm your partner. I am working with leaders to build their competency in leading change. No matter what change, if it's a organizational change, a process change, a technology change, we'll do that. And those are big transformations usually when someone brings in an FTE. But as a consultant, it's more being a partner with the leaders and saying, I've rode this ride before. I've been on this rodeo. So these are the things that we need to look out for. And these are the things that we can do to reduce resistance, retain employees, be collaborative, be inclusive, even if it's especially when it's a culture change. Culture change, you have to have a good, solid strategy.
That's a significant ask of most people.
Yeah, and even vocabulary, when you're trying to change how people work with each other, talk with each other, and having the ability to be able to see that through, because the framework that I use is called ADKAR. It's ProSci.
Could you say that again?
ADKAR.
ADKAR.
Yeah. So it's awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, reinforcement. 5 letters.
Okay.
But the ability and desire are something that you see in a lot of communications. You see in that collaborative effort of really understanding why we're making the change, and what's in it for me, what's in it for our team, what's in it for our organization, and helping people to understand all of those things before they ever understand how we're actually going to do this and make this change.
That makes sense, yeah.
And then going to training, doing the ability and reinforcement is usually the area that companies fail. And just being honest.
What does ability refer to?
Yeah, that's going back to your desk
mechanism
and your hands-on keyboard.
Okay.
You've been asked to do something different in the training, and then you're back in the ability phase. The ability phase is I'm wearing the technology that's being asked of me. I know how to put it on. I know how to start it up every time. I understand how to put this practice into place. And sometimes when you go back to your desk or you go back to the floor or wherever you're working, that ability phase needs some adjustment, right? Or you need some coaching from your leader to actually make the things happen that were being asked of you in the training, or that positive reinforcement that we're looking for of saying, hey, this is really great. This is how we're able to use this to learn from this technology, or we're able to produce faster, or, we have 0 safety incidents for the last 365 days. Those different types of areas that help that reinforcement of the change. And you're measuring those things. So figuring out what behaviors you're measuring in that ability phase and helping leaders coach and guide through that, that's like, it sounds super simple, but it's something that we don't do on a regular basis.
Yeah, I don't see that typically when we're implementing changes, but it sounds like there are common pitfalls. I mean, we're dealing with humanity, and everybody is going to receive that change directive differently, probably. Right. They're going to have different fears, and they're going to be... I'm seeing this like in my mind, a normal distribution, a bell curve. And at one side of the distribution, you always have your folks that are hard workers. They're always on board. They volunteer. They're going to do whatever you ask and more, that discretionary energy group that's going to give. On the other end, you get the people that, this sucks, I'm never doing that. No. Flavor of the month, we just did something different last month, and now they're rolling some new crap out. And then under the curve, you've got the majority of people who are just really wanting some direction. Right. And your comment about describing all of, the why we're doing this, it's kind of that Simon Sinek, what's the why, or why, or whatever. Figure out your why before you actually talk about how we're going to do it. Right. That makes total sense to me now that you say that. So that's the motivation for that person of, why am I going to pay attention in training? Why should I? To me? Yeah. Why should I pay attention in training? And really nailing that down. So I taught at the police academy many years ago, but at the time we had to train. We had 800 law enforcement officers. We had to put through CPR training, and we all knew that there were incidents that were under litigation because people had heart attacks and needed CPR, while they were under the supervision of police officers. And so we all knew why we were in training, right? And that's not a secret. But the motivation that I and others who were training CPR at the time put forth to the group each time we trained them was, this is not a mandate. Don't look at this as the mandate that we have to all go through this. Look at it as an opportunity. Like, you can use CPR when you're at your kid's basketball game, when you're in your backyard at a picnic. There's a number of ways to be able to use this certification that the company is paying for. But really this is why we want to pay attention. I understand you all feel like you have to be here. And we've talked about this too in our former conversation, that sometimes an incident happens and the organization needs to respond appropriately by providing that. But really taking that time to understand there's not just the incident that we're responding to, it's actually the safety concern we want to make sure we're addressing for our employees, for our customers. So what more can we dig in to really get maybe 5 whys of why we're there, and not just one? We're not just here because of the incident. We're here because
more responsible, and we want to show up for our customers and our employees. And we want to grow our company. We want to work together. We want to learn this together. Whatever those 5 whys are, and then being able to move into training. So everybody's there. Mm-hmm. Have you ever been at a training where you're like, what the hell am I here?
Oh, constantly. Even the training that I give, I wonder that's, Nice. But no, you just touched on something that has really permeated my world, this, this reactive change. We've had an incident, and oftentimes in my world, it's a bad accident or a fatality or something. And there is this knee-jerk response. And as you said, everybody sitting in the room knows that we are there. Oftentimes they believe it's because of some liability concern or issue within the management of the company, but we are there for that reason. Let's not sugarcoat this. We're not here because of, this, this happy, touchy,
Yeah.
We are there because we had a bad outcome and the company is reacting to that. But as you described, whether or not you're on board with what the company is doing, there is value in that to you in some way. And that idea that this training can be valuable to you outside of the workplace is something that we always try to touch upon, because it truly is. The majority of your time is spent outside of the workplace if you're a 40-hour person.
Yeah.
Hopefully. And like you said, you may need these same skills, these same hazard recognition or whatever that might be skills can really serve you well out in your personal world as well. So finding that connection, making it relevant is really critical.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it doesn't take much, being able to ask a handful of people, call it a focus group, call it whatever you want. You're asking a handful of people we know that we have to put a training together. What's the motivation besides legally? But, find me some more connection to really understand why we're doing this as an organization. Why are we putting money into this? And
so who are you asking that question? If you've been retained by
if I've been retained, I want to understand who all the stakeholders are. Like who are the people in the C-suite that are impacted by this? Is it the operations leader? Is it the person who's distribution manager? Whoever's impacted. But I also want to understand, who are we bringing to training, and what's their motivation for coming to this training? What's their why? Is it important because they they might understand and empathize with the incident more of who was lost and who was impacted by that specific incident. So what can we do to help and bring that to fruition so I understand what their impact is and why they would be motivated to learn about it. The other thing it made me think of is with like a big technology change when we have any type of legacy system. When I've gone into organizations and we're making changes there, I always want to know who made this process or who created this technology when we first came into this. We started this 20 years ago, because that person's really important. That's probably their baby, or something that they were like, I contributed a ton.
It's very personal to them.
Very personal. So really understanding who that person is or who that team is, and what can we do to learn from them? And hey, how can you make this better? What can we learn from you that you learned back 20 years ago implementing this that we can still apply today to our sweet human beings that are being impacted by it? And that's really helpful to be able to understand more about who's feeling the biggest loss, maybe.
That is a really interesting comment. And again, I'm envisioning the 30, 40-year people that have been with the company all of those years. They were there in the beginning. They've been doing things a certain way successfully, obviously, if they're still operating for a long time.
Yeah.
And now we are changing economically driven or whatever, technology driven, efficiency driven.
Right.
And so then do you have to approach how you describe the change or imagine the change differently to those old crusty veterans versus these new young people that may embrace the technology change immediately?
I would lean right into my sweet veterans and understand, like, what can I do to help you? I want to learn from you. You probably have been complaining about this for maybe they've been complaining about it for 20 years and they're finally happy something's going to happen. And that is always a concern, but leaning into somebody who's been there for a long period of time and understanding their perspective, because we might make an assumption that they're going to be grumpy about it, but it could be that they're the early adopter. Finally, someone's going to do something about this. Finally, someone's going to change this.
I like that. I mean, there's a lot of, I've heard a lot of people say, find that person. There is a person in your facility or a few people that are the veterans and they're grumpy. But if you can engage them and you can enlist them, in your mission, they are really powerful advocates.
I agree.
So understanding why they're so resistant is important.
That is one of my strategies, and any strategy of any leader who's in this work should be, is to embrace that sweet, grumpy person. And it's so funny. I would rather have a vocal.
The glass is half full. It sounds like.
I'm always a positive person. But I would rather embrace a vocal dissenter, is what I call them, than a silent dissenter. Silent dissenters are like that kind of cancerous, and they don't want to. I mean, you're so funny when you do that. So I train law enforcement officers who would literally put up their newspaper, then listen to me. But it's walking around and, hey, Jerry, let's have this conversation, and how can you see this helping you in your work? How can you help me to understand? Because I'm not doing your job every day. So what can you do to help me to understand, if we implement this change, what are the pros and cons? What are the things that you're concerned about? What are the things that would benefit us? What are the things that would benefit our customers? What are the things that would benefit your peers? Really leaning into that conversation and not being afraid to have it is a step in the right direction anyway. I think sometimes people are afraid to have those crucial conversations because they're afraid they're going to piss them off. And I would much rather have the conversation and really, truly understand. And that's where I'm coming from, is that genuine understanding of what are your concerns? Because they could be pretty legit. Like, hey, we did try this 5 years ago. Well, help me to understand what's different now. It's the technology, or there's a new process, or we're being forced to do it. These are all things that, we can empathize and understand and work together to get through.
I think a lot of leaders are afraid to ask those questions too. I think, they ruffle feathers perhaps, or they cause a little bit more conflict than they are willing to endure. So having a third party facilitate that is probably pretty important.
Yeah. And I want their relationship to be there. I want it to be there all the way through the end. So having respect, understanding where this person has come from in their career, what they have built, really understanding where they're at. I want the relationship with the employee and the organization to last a long time. And I want the relationship with that leader and their employee to last a long time. I think having a crucial conversation is more about retaining that relationship than the opportunity to have the relationship and really gel on something than to not have the conversation and split. I see that happen a lot more, that I'm just not going to talk about it. And then it never gets addressed. And then, the grumpy employee, this is his little brain, not happy, if you can't see.
I got the brain.
Yeah, his little brain's going,
Yeah.
I'm still crabby. I'm still stuck in that amygdala because no one ever asked me about my fears. No one ever talked to me to get me to that prefrontal cortex.
So does it necessitate a conversation with every person to some degree? I mean,
not to every person, because you can have that peer-to-peer. Once you, so super secret, not super secret. It's once you flip that your most vocal dissenter, especially if he or she is an influencer, you can flip the rest of the crew.
Yeah.
I don't know if you think about a team that you've been on where you have, let's say, a veteran that can either, if you get him or her on board, they're going to bring everybody else along, or, in that middle 80% that you're talking about, or they're going to bring down your change, or bring down your initiative.
I think often I have been that person.
Yeah.
I've been that person that will either lead one way or the other, and not intentionally, or even I don't intentionally undermine things, but I can remember, being the more senior person and having some level of influence on my coworkers.
Yeah. And so if someone was to take the time to really understand what your concerns were, why you were, maybe not part of leading that change, or asked about, because you have an expertise, because you've been there maybe longer than the leader has. Those are all things that are running around in your amygdala, and not saying just you, any human being, and you're thinking about that and you're stewing on it, or you're like, why? There's a reason why you feel uncomfortable or incongruent with this change, and helping to resolve those and helping them, anybody to help have a conversation and understanding why they're making the change. It's not personal. We do want to understand. And I agree. You don't have to talk to everybody. If you find your person of influence or your the person leading from any state, you can help the rest of the team come along. They're strong leaders. It also, if I'm thinking strategically as a leader, it also gives them an opportunity to lead from where they're at, and a professional development opportunity. Be a part of this cross-functional team. Contribute your thoughts and input on how we can make this change better for your peers, and then go out and lead the change alongside of me. And that's rewarded, hopefully, if you're at a good company with a great culture, right? And make it smoother.
So let's talk a little bit about the process. So, or your services in general. As a consultant, what will you do for a company or a client? So if they have a change that they know they're going through, or just prepare them for change in general, and then you facilitate, how does it work? If we retain you, what kind of things can you do for us?
Sure. So there is change readiness, which is the preparation for the change, and helping to do assessments and understanding where the organization is at. Whether
there's an imminent change or not, you can prepare them for, because there is an imminent change, whether they realize it or not.
Everybody's changing. You think about any type of technology, we're evolving faster and faster throughout every year. It seems to get faster. But being able to prepare your company for any change. If you have, let's say, a company that's impacted by regulation changes every year annually, let's set up a nice set of standards of this is the process that's going to happen anytime we see a new regulation come out. We're going to, understand what the regulation is from legal, what it is that we have to do, and then we're going to work with our teams to see how we're going to implement this cross-functionally, together, safely, all these, steps.
I like that.
And then if I'm Sally, forklift driver, I know, here's the things that are starting to happen. I know that this regulation change is going to happen, or it's that time of year that these regulation changes come. I know I'm going to be asked by my leader to attend a meeting for a training. I'm going to be asked for input on that. These are things that we can just set up as regular habits.
I like that.
To make it a normal course of business.
Yeah.
Right? Because we know that these are going to change. Also, if there's a big implementation of a new technology, let's talk about the wearable technology that's helped with safety. Any type of those big changes where you're going to have a mindset shift and you're going to have some resistance, big brother's looking down on me. How can we start to have conversations with our teams so that they understand the reasons why that we're making this change, why it's important, what are our goals in setting and making this change, and help get their input on what's important to them, because they're the ones that are on the floor or out in the field or doing wherever they're working. Be able to get their input and then put those processes and steps in place. How can this technology enable us to be more efficient, meet our goals, serve our customers better, grow our company, whatever it is that you're able to use that data for, keep our company employees safe.
Does that have to come from, so I'm envisioning Make You Safe, the kind of the wearable technology that you're describing, and a sponsor of the podcast and good friends over in Des Moines, and I know that when they come in to implement that process initially, there is a lot of resistance because of that whole big brother thing that you just described. All of a sudden now they're going to know I'm taking an extra 15 minutes at lunch or whatever.
Everybody knows that you're taking that.
Yeah, it's already, it's well understood. Yeah. So I'm sure they come in, they're a very astute group, but they come in and they probably address those things, but they may not be well than addressed by the company.
Right.
Is it possible to do this with the third party driving that, or it must be imperative that the company is also participating in that?
Yeah. When I work with leaders, I explain to them very well, like, nobody's going to open an email from Erin Aliano if you're a leader.
Hopefully.
You want my business.
Right.
But your employees aren't. Number one, they want to hear from their direct leader about any type of behavioral changes, process changes, any new technology coming in. They want to hear from the CEO or the C-suite on why it's important that we're making this change, what the goals are, how to set this up for success, what they're going to do to help support, what training is going to be in place, how they're going to address any concerns, all of those big picture strategic. And then from the leader, they want to know exactly what we're doing from our team and why is it beneficial for us. So it's a little bit macro, micro when it comes to any type of communications. But yes, from a third party, like technology, it's always somebody working with the actual organization, because that communication needs to happen in a personal level, in a very big connection, right? I'm not an expert in safety. I'm an expert in people. And you have people who work in safety jobs. I'm not an expert at being a police officer, but I am an expert with people who are doing the duties and tasks of a police officer or a finance person or a credit lender or any of those.
Yeah, I like that. So I'm again envisioning Make You Safe. In order to make this transition work, they probably need to retain you and send you into the organization ahead of the implementation schedule so that you can get these pieces in place. Yeah, they're a fantastic outfit. That'd be a great partnership.
Yeah, I love listening to that podcast and hearing. They sound like they have a really good same mindset in working with people, making their product better based on
no doubt,
implementing or based on their past implementations and their past products. Being able to assess the change readiness and understand what the gap is there. Let's say there's a company that they really stink at communication. Like, communication is really important.
Like most of them, truthfully.
Yes. Being able to help build up that communication muscle. Even one place where people know this is where I go for the latest and greatest information on this implementation. The implementation could be happening 9 months from now, but what are we going to start? What beat are we going to start? Making sure people are getting the latest and greatest information, the most accurate information, and the ability to provide feedback, starting that feedback loop so that we can understand, hey, this is not landing, this is landing, or they think this is fluff. Let's not, that's the other part, is all the fluff stuff. So cut out the fluff. Have serious conversations and put that communication out there so people understand what's being asked of them, what's the expectations, what goals are we trying to achieve, like why are we putting money into this, and help them wrap their minds around it, that amygdala into the prefrontal cortex, and ask the questions that they need so that we can have a good implementation and start measuring what matters on the other side.
I mean, there's really no limit to how the utility of these concepts, because now I'm envisioning, okay, man, we're just like repaving the parking lot. And so now everybody's going to have to park somewhere else. And even though that might seem like a trivial change, it's going to, the water cooler is going to be buzzing, right? And you want to try to head that off at the pass.
Minimize the amount of time that
the disruption.
Confused. Or even the misinformation that happens. Like, oh, they're never, they're going to probably pave half the parking lot, never pave the other half. Those kinds of things that stir up.
Yeah.
And I love the little amygdala.
Right. Yeah, the reptile.
People get stuck there. Yeah.
Yes.
We have a bias to make up our own stories. We have a bias to be like, oh, the CEO, he likes to do the flavor of the month, and this is the most popular thing right now.
Here we go again.
This is what we're going to do. Instead of saying, really, what is he or she saying about this? Is it true? Does it match up with what our strategic goals are? Or does it match up with what we're trying to achieve as a company? Does it meet our customers' needs? Like, do we understand really why we're doing this? And getting that congruent. So remember last time we stew in the incongruence because something's not right. But to get that congruence so that we can get to that prefrontal cortex and say, you know what, I know I'm a leader from where I sit, and I want to make sure that my peers are coming along and we're part of this change, and we're going to make it, make it work. Yeah.
Wow. This is huge.
Yeah, I love it.
The more that you describe it, the more utility that it obviously has, and the more critical it is. And it's really understandable why so many changes just fall flat.
Yeah,
they just fail.
There's a lot of ways to screw up.
There are.
And so think about our society right now. We're so distracted, right? It's so easy to get distracted. When I think about a leader saying, Doug's not paying attention, Sally's not paying attention, I can't get my people to move along. Well, let's really think about what's going on. Maybe in their personal life, is Doug's wife going through something? Is Sally just had a baby? What are some things going on there? Because it's personal. Work, you bring your personal stuff to work sometimes, but is there an opportunity to get them back on the happy path? Is there an opportunity to get to the
There is a happy path?
There is a happy path.
I've missed it, Grandma.
To get them back, to achieve this goal. And, maybe that's a one-on-one conversation. Maybe that's an opportunity to really lean into understanding where your team is at and what they're struggling with. But it can happen, and not just making up the story as a leader in your own head, like, Doug's always resistant, but really trying to address what's going on with Doug, that he's being resistant, not just assuming he's resistant because he's an old grumpy dinosaur.
Right.
Yeah. And I think, like you said before, leaders are resistant to having those conversations, and I'm more than happy to help coach people through those conversations, help lead them into those conversations, because in the long run, I want the relationship to be successful between the employee and their organization.
Right.
I want long-term happy employees. So
everyone does.
Yeah.
I don't know that they have any idea how to get there, but everyone does.
Yeah. This is it's something to do.
I can't envision a company that doesn't need your service. Truthfully, whether that be, in preparation for a big major undertaking, or even just for these relatively common day-to-day types of changes, just to have that skill set at their disposal.
Yeah.
So, but do you want to keep talking? I was going to say, how do they get a hold?
I was going to say, let's start, you have the change readiness, but then, so you have your operational strategy, or, however we're going to get this to fruition. But there's also a change strategy that goes along with it. The communications, the training is part of it, but also the feedback loop, the focus groups. How are we going to involve a cross-functional discipline team to provide input? How are we going to check with people along the way? There's a whole change strategy that goes along on top, underneath, meshed in, however you want to look at it, with implementing any type of process, people, or technology change. And then once again,
so you coach on that.
Okay. And help them to implement it. What questions are we asking in a pulse survey?
I got you.
What's really going to make a difference in helping them to come along? And when we get those results back, actually taking action on them, and not just being like, oh, look, we have these results. People
put them in my inbox.
Yeah, exactly. It's okay. These are actions that we're going to take because we heard this from the survey. So you can help people with survey. Yeah, action. Yeah,
that's
in focus groups
as a small subset of it. That's something people do horribly, typically as well. Not asking the right questions, and certainly not utilizing the feedback.
Exactly, the feedback is key, because otherwise you're going to get people who are like, "Well, I'm not doing the survey. They never do anything with the information anyway, right?"
We used to do the survey of the government. Okay, so this was a mandatory survey, and it was about 10 or 20 factors, and they would ask us to give feedback about these different elements, and we would all give feedback, and they would always come back the same. And then we were tasked with some sort of mitigation or corrective action of some sort. And we would look at the top 3, and the top 2 usually had to do with management, so we knew nothing would change there. So we would cross those off, and we would get down to element number 7, that was, what flavors of soda should we have in the vending machine? And we would end up, we would work on something like that.
Well, at least you're responding.
We responded.
That's a step in the right direction. There, you could have just been like, eh.
Well, that ultimately you got to that, I think, because
the actions were.
Because you didn't feel like there was going to be any result, any change from that.
Yeah, that's.
What else you got on there?
Okay. The last one is really that sustainment, and saying we're going to measure this, and we're going to continue to have this as business as usual. and get to that new normal, and being able to make adjustments. Okay, they're not after training, people are back at their job site and they're not following through. What can we do to help reinforce it? What can we do to help? And positive reinforcement goes a long way, not just negative reinforcement, but really, what are we going to do to help coach and guide them? And we're going to measure to make sure that we actually achieved the success that we were looking at, the return on our investment, retaining employees, whatever the goal was for that.
And sustain it, obviously.
And sustain it, yeah. Because a lot of times that's where companies fail, where they're just like, oh gosh, this was really hard. That's where you get the changes hard.
We've launched it.
Yeah, we got to follow through with it. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I love it.
People can get a hold of me through my email. I'm on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Erin Aliano.
Right.
Common spelling.
ERIN. No, I don't know if that's common or not, but Aliano, ALIANO. I found you. So
Thank you. I'm in the Omaha metro area. Yeah. We're LinkedIn. I don't know. I think that's what it's called. I'm not a social media person. Yeah. LinkedIn is my only form.
Yeah, me too. I'm with you.
Yeah.
4Leaf Solutions. You have a website.
I don't have a website.
You don't have a website. No. You don't need a website. I have a website. It's a waste of money.
Yeah.
You don't need a website.
I'm still debating that. So.
What your email?
My email is Erin, ERIN, 4, solutions @gmail.com.
I like that. Yeah. Erin 4 Solutions. And so we are rolling up on time. Tell me a little bit about there seems to be a
theme.
There's a theme, yeah. So the 4-leaf clover, and is there a connection? I mean, what?
Yeah. So
are you Irish?
I am Irish.
Okay.
Yes. So on St. Patrick's Day, celebrated in my family, like good Midwesterners, and we love and embrace. So when I was thinking about naming the company, first I went through all the Tom Petty songs that are my favorite because he's my favorite.
Right. Did you hear that, Leanne? We got another Tom Petty fan here.
He has a lot of songs about change, but none of them fit what I was looking for. So I went with 4-leaf for the 4-leaf clover, and there's faith, hope, love, and luck. And when I'm thinking about change, you have to have faith in the change that you're making. You have to have a little bit of hope in the people that you're leading through the change. You have to lean in with that love to coach them through and really support them through the change.
And kind of alleviate that fear, right? I mean, those are almost opposites.
Yeah, exactly. Doug, you're awesome. And then there's always a little bit of luck when it comes to making a change. And
I like that.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Thank you.
That's really cool. I think that's something people will remember. We've got a few minutes left. Is there a take-home message that you would like to send people home with, or
sure,
you have a story you can tell about a successful change? Anything that you would like to?
One thing I do want to say is Abby has invited me to the Midwest Safety Co-op meeting.
Fantastic.
September 28th, and 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. is that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
it's virtual, so you will be giving a presentation for the Midwest Safety Cooperative.
Yep, and it's on 5 change leadership skills. So that's a start.
I love that.
Yeah, and they're super simple, and you're probably going to listen to them and say, okay, totally know those. But it's something just to keep in mind when you are leading your teams through change. And so I encourage people to, see.
Yeah, well, we've got a pretty large membership of the Midwest Safety Cooperative, and in large part because of Abby. She's been kind of she and Danny Arroyo have been driving that for me for a while. So it is outstanding. So we look forward to that.
Yeah. So, and I would encourage anybody who's looking at change management and being able to implement any type of strategy, project, whether you're trying to grow your business, whether or not you're trying to implement a new safety technique or compliance from regulations, is reach out. I'm more than happy to consult with anybody. I'm more than happy to go into a contract and engagement and helping people. And if I'm not available, I'm also happy to refer and partner with others. I think change management is something that organizations do when they really care about their people. And it's
without question
so easy to show that you care about your people when you're bringing in somebody who wants to have conversations with them, wants to know how to do things better, wants to make sure everybody's change ready for any change that happens, and then wants to hear feedback from their teams to be able to make things better for them. Yeah.
Can we put you on retainer then? So like we'll put you on retainer, and then when we have these issues come up, we can like reach out to you and get a little boost of.
Yeah. So there's a contract if there is a statement of work that goes along with an actual project that's going forward. And then there's the retainer if you need some consult as you have smaller changes, you want to build those habits, you want to do some training for your leaders, and then have coaching afterwards. There's a number of different packages that
I love that. Yeah, that's fantastic. What about like open enrollment? If I set up like an open enrollment course, like leadership training, and you come in and you talk about this piece, would you be interested in doing something like that?
100%.
I've got some leadership people that I turn to. I have absolutely no leadership skills. I was in the government for 25 years, so I don't know.
I was only there for 7.5, so.
Yeah, well, so you've overcome that somehow. Good therapist maybe, or whatever that was. But
that's funny.
I really think going forward, 2024, I would really like, I've been doing this for a long time and doing safety for a long time, and the criticality of the leadership piece cannot be overstated, and this change piece is so important that I really want to, I've been thinking about this, and my buddy Erin, my buddy Chris, we've been talking about doing leadership training, coaching, and I know you can listen to Simon Sinek on whatever, but
it's the application of it, right? You can do a training, you can see your TED Talks,
all nice.
Whatever you want, but it's actually the application. So if we're thinking of making a behavioral change for leaders, they're aware that they need to change. I'm going back to the ADKAR framework. They're aware that they need to make a change. They have a desire or motivation to try to make that change, to be a better leader, to show up for their team better, to be better for their organization, to be more marketable, whatever their motivation is. And then the knowledge that you want to share in this leadership course or this leadership cohort academy, be able to give them that. But also then the application, right? The ability phase when they go back to work and they're applying it and they're like, okay, I tried to engage with my biggest resistor. It didn't work. It was shitty. And saying, okay, let me help you coach you through that. That's where the retainer package comes in. Let me help coach you through that. And this is a way that you can approach it and think about how you're going to do it before just doing it. And then if that didn't work, let's regroup and figure out how we're going to do it again. Because we're not going to just give up. We're going to keep trying to go back and help this person and help your team. And then reinforce that. What are some of the behavioral changes that we want to see with that team? What are some of the behavioral changes that you want to see as a leader, and who's holding you accountable for that? Hopefully you're a leader. One of the areas, too, not only for leaders, when we're thinking about as individuals, I am lined up to do a couple of presentations for some local organizations that they're struggling with the next generation of individual accountability. And talking with them, not as a ever shame or blame, but as an individual, I show up and I'm part of a team. If I come in and I'm in a poopy mood, then I'm impacting the environment that I'm around. So what can I do to ensure my individual accountability to my team, to my leader, to the organization? And I just have a number of leaders that have reached out and they're like, we're struggling with this.
I'll bet.
Putting together a plan, not only to do the presentation, but then to have that as an individual, pick out a behavioral change that you want to do for yourself. And it can benefit your family, it can benefit your work life, and holding them accountable and saying, okay, these are the steps that we're going to do to change that behavior. Work with your leader one-on-one to help coach them through. And that's something
I really think that would be useful. Yeah. I think sometimes maybe we are unaware or minimize the impact that negativity, even from a team member who may not be the leader of the team, can have on it, on an organization.
Yeah, and I've been guilty of that too. Of course. Everybody's human. Everybody has a brain. So,
got to get them on the happy path.
The happy path.
Or the happy trail or whatever. Absolutely. No, I appreciate that. And I think, bringing that positivity into your work is so important.
It's stressful. I know change is stressful for people. And my goal is to help minimize the amount of stress, really think through and strategize. How can we partner up and make sure that we're going to get everybody through it, but through it successfully and happy and engaged and wanting to be a part of this organization, wanting to be a part of a team, wanting to work with your leader, wherever you're at, is really to to help that relationship for that organization and that leader and that person.
Yeah, I like that. Erin Aliano, 4 Leaf Solutions, change management, but so much more than that, really, when you get right down to it.
Yeah, it's a lot of it's a lot. Coaching, a little bit of counseling. Yeah.
I think we are all counselors to some degree.
I agree.
Consultants seem to act in that role oftentimes.
Yeah, and I think it's beneficial for leaders to have someone to bounce ideas off of or help walk me through. Or have you ever been in this situation?
Right.
I think that's really helpful. I know it would have benefited me in some of my past experiences.
Agreed.
Yeah.
It's Erin, the numeral 4, solutions@gmail.com. And don't look for the website because it's going to be hard to find. No, you're fine. I a little overrated. This has been really interesting. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, it's great. And we'll have to thank Abby. You'll see her maybe before I don't know.
But... I will. I invited her over next week for the Husker game.
Oh, good. Yeah. Well, tell her I said thank you. I'll talk to her at some point.
Good.
Thanks, everybody. I hope you find this as informative and as useful as I do. I think everybody needs to be on board, getting prepared for the inevitable change that we all face probably every day. And these skills undoubtedly are not everywhere that I go. So I think everyone would benefit from some more information about this. So give Erin, or I guess don't call her, email her or hit her on LinkedIn.
Yeah, more than happy to.
The social media that most of us do.
That's the only one
that doesn't disgust us. Totally. Yeah. And have a great weekend. Let's see if the Huskers can pull it out this weekend. That would be nice, right?
Well, they're going through some transition.
Absolutely. Yeah. Have you worked with them at all?
No, maybe they should call me or email me or LinkedIn me.
I would think so. Yeah. Absolutely. All right, guys, have a great weekend. I hope you have a good week next week. We will talk to you again next Friday. Bye-bye.
Thank you.